Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. To start, this is about the company I work for and a trip I took because I had to wire a building for a computer network since the building owner wouldn't. Backstory. Our company was relocating a remote site to a new building in early 2023. As the IT manager, I was asked to check out the new place and mark out network ports. The landlord, Mr. Grimes, refused to install any low-voltage lines, and the quotes we got were astronomical. So, there I was, loading up my SUV with 4 boxes of Cat 6 plenum cable. It's about a 6-hour drive, and I had around 25 drops to do. Not a massive job, but still a few days' work in a place that's already built up with drop ceilings covered in insulation. Messy, itchy work, but someone had to do it. Story. Day 1. We arrive on a Monday morning in early June. It's a surprisingly cool summer day, and since we're from further south, no one notices the AC isn't working for about an hour. Then, the building starts heating up like an oven. By noon, it's 80 F, and by 3 p.m., it's pushing 85 F. The rooms with floor-to-ceiling windows feel like greenhouses. It's unbearable. I overhear Sarah, one of the on-site workers, telling my colleague, "Can you believe they've known about the AC problem for 3 weeks and did nothing?" I shake my head in disbelief and mutter, "3 weeks? You've got to be kidding me." Sarah nods. "Wish I was. They just kept saying they'd get to it." The kicker? There are still construction workers on site. So much for the building being ready for handover on day 1. Day 2. We're all on edge. It's already 80 F when we walk in at 8 a.m. It's like working in a sauna. Mark, our facilities manager who came up with me, is losing it. I can hear him shouting into his phone, "I don't care what it takes. Get someone here to fix this damn AC now." By 3 p.m., we're all exhausted from the heat. While working on the wiring, I pop open a ceiling tile and spot a massive 4-foot hole in the ducting. The AC is blowing, but it's just circulating hot air. We're told the compressor is broken. "Great," I mutter. "Just great." Day 3. More of the same misery. I'm finally getting the last lines punched in on the patch panel when the AC guys show up around 10 a.m. They finish up at 2 p.m., and we corner them as they're packing up. "So, what exactly did you guys do?" I ask. One of them shrugs. "A lot of things." Mark presses, "Yeah, but what specifically?" "Sorry, we can't tell tenants," the guy replies, avoiding eye contact. Red flag alert. We contact our realtor, Emma, who promises to look into it. That night, she emails us. They changed the refrigerant from R22 to R410A. I turn to Mark. "No way, dude. That's like putting gas in a diesel engine. They'd have to change out the entire system. They didn't do that in 4 hours. Mark nods. "They've just patched it up. It'll run poorly for a month, then give out, and we'll be stuck with a replacement." Day 4. Still no running water in some areas, workers still on site, and the AC can't handle the midday heat. It hits around 80 degrees by the end of the day, even with the AC running non-stop. We start packing up everything we moved in, preparing to leave. As I'm working, I notice something odd about the fire sprinklers. They look like they've shifted, and the metal protection around the drop tiles has fallen to the floor. In some places, the sprinklers aren't even protruding from the tiles anymore, while in others, they're hanging way too low. "You've got to be kidding me," I groan, realizing what happened. Those AC idiots must have stood on the fire sprinklers to fix their shoddy ductwork. We try to find a friendly way out, contacting Mr. Grimes to say, "You haven't delivered a finished building. We're moving out. The lease is broken." Mr. Grimes isn't budging. He's got a 36-page lease and won't let us out of the 5-year commitment. This is not starting well at all. We get in touch with our corporate lawyer and Emma. They both agree we're in a tough spot. Desperate for any way out, I start examining the fire system, drawing on my experience with low-voltage lines. "Hey, Mark," I call out. "There's no fire panel in our section of the building, and none of these smoke detectors are connected to anything." Just then, one of our employees moving heavy gear chimes in. "Oh yeah, I meant to mention I never saw any building permits anywhere." Bingo! They did this entire build-out, demolition, new plumbing, power lines, and destroying the fire system, without a city permit. Time to call the city inspector's office. Day 5, I wasn't there for this part, but Mark filled me in later. The city inspector, Mr. Johnson, checked for building permits, found zip. He uncovered multiple code violations and red-tagged our area, yanking the certificate of occupancy. When I told him to check the fire system like you suggested, he just went pale and said, "Oh no, I have to make a call." Next thing I know, he's on the phone with the fire marshal. Day 8. The fire marshals show up. They find no active alarm system in our part of the building. Instant red tag. Then they discover the sprinkler riser for the entire building in our area has no water pressure. Boom. The whole building is condemned. In the end, Mr. Grimes wouldn't let us out of the lease because we signed it, even though he never delivered a building in any semblance of working order. We called the building inspector, who then called the fire marshal, and they condemned the entire building. Mr. Grimes and his company are still trying to fight us, but we're pushing for more than just the refunded deposit and rent, which they've already coughed up. We want compensation for all the time spent moving gear in and out, plus the wiring work. Our lawyer says they don't have a leg to stand on, and he's more than happy for them to cover his fees too. As Mark put it, sometimes karma needs a little nudge. We just gave it a big shove. The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd be the type of person to have problems with my neighbors, but boy was I wrong. It all started when I moved into my dream home last year, a beautiful property with a few acres of land and a private pool. The house itself wasn't anything fancy, but the land and that pool made it perfect. I was so excited to finally have a place where I could relax and enjoy some peace and quiet. Little did I know that my next-door neighbor, who I'll call Karen, had other plans. Karen was the president of our neighborhood's homeowner association, even though my property wasn't actually part of the homeowner association. From day one, she made it clear that she thought my land should be for the community. At first, it was just little things. She'd accidentally let her dog run onto my property, or she'd ask if her kids could use my pool just this once because it was so hot out. I tried to be a good neighbor and allowed it a few times, but it quickly became clear that Karen felt entitled to use my land whenever she wanted. Things really came to a head last month. I had to go out of town for a week for work. When I got back, I was stunned to see dozens of people lounging around my pool and all over my lawn. There were coolers full of beer, a grill fired up, and music blasting. Kids were running around screaming and splashing in the pool. I stormed over, absolutely livid. "What the hell is going on here?" I yelled. Karen sauntered up to me with a smug look on her face. "Oh, you're back. We're just having a little neighborhood get-together. Isn't it nice?" "Nice? This is my private property. You can't just throw a party here without my permission." Karen rolled her eyes. "Don't be so selfish. This is for the whole community. Besides, you weren't even using it while you were gone." I was speechless. The audacity of this woman was unbelievable. "Everyone needs to leave right now," I said through gritted teeth. "You can't make us leave," Karen sneered. "This is homeowner association property now." "What are you talking about? I never joined your homeowner association." Karen waved a piece of paper in my face. "You did now. I had you sign the paperwork before you left, remember? For that community garden project?" My blood ran cold as I realized what had happened. Before I left town, Karen had come by with some papers she said were for a new community garden. I was in a rush and barely glanced at them before signing. Now I realized she had tricked me into signing homeowner association membership papers. "That's fraud," I shouted. "You lied about what I was signing." Karen just shrugged. "Too bad, so sad. You signed it. End of story. Now be a good neighbor and let us enjoy the party." I was shaking with anger at this point. I pulled out my phone and called the police to report trespassers on my property. Karen tried to grab my phone, yelling that I couldn't do that. When the police arrived 20 minutes later, the party was still in full swing. I explained the situation to the officers, showing them my property deed and insisting that I had been tricked into signing homeowner association papers. Karen kept interrupting, waving around the membership form and insisting she had the right to use my land. Thankfully, the police sided with me. They informed Karen that even if I had signed homeowner association papers, which was questionable, that didn't give her the right to use my private property without permission. They ordered everyone to leave immediately. As people grumbled and packed up their things, I overheard Karen telling her friends, "Don't worry, we'll be back next weekend. He can't stop us." That was the last straw. The next day, I went straight to a lawyer to see what my options were. The lawyer was appalled when I explained the situation and assured me we had a strong case. We ended up suing Karen and the homeowner association for fraud, trespassing, and property damage. It turned out my pool pump had been damaged from improper use during the party. We also filed for a restraining order to keep Karen off my property. The case went to court a few months later. Karen tried to argue that I had willingly joined the homeowner association, but her story quickly fell apart under questioning. She couldn't explain why the community garden papers I thought I was signing turned out to be homeowner association membership forms. Several of my neighbors testified that Karen had been boasting about tricking me into joining the homeowner association so she could use my pool. She had even sent out invites for the party days before I had supposedly signed the membership form. The judge was not impressed with Karen's behavior. In the end, the court ruled in my favor on all counts. The homeowner association had to pay for the damages to my property, and Karen was ordered to pay a hefty fine for fraud. The restraining order was granted, legally barring Karen from setting foot on my land. But the best part? The judge also ruled that the homeowner association had been operating illegally. Apparently, Karen had been pulling similar stunts with other residents, tricking them into joining. The entire homeowner association was ordered to disband. After the ruling, I got an unexpected visit from some of my neighbors. They sheepishly apologized for going along with Karen's schemes. Many of them admitted they had felt bullied by her, but were afraid to speak up. They thanked me for finally standing up to her and offered to help clean up my yard and pool as a peace offering. These days, things are much quieter in the neighborhood. Karen ended up moving away shortly after the lawsuit, unable to face her neighbors after her lies were exposed. I still have my beautiful property and pool, and now I can actually enjoy them in peace. I've learned my lesson about reading things carefully before signing them, but I've also learned the importance of standing up for yourself when someone tries to take advantage of you. It wasn't easy going through a lawsuit, but in the end it was worth it to protect what's mine and put a stop to Karen's entitled behavior. The next one is a petty revenge story. I work in product management and had been having issues with my tech lead for over 4 months. General tardiness, not showing up for meetings, or answering questions over Slack. I had escalated it to my manager, but nothing was done about it. So I stopped caring and just got on to doing engineering coordination as well with other teams. Last week there was a miscommunication between me and other engineering team, and they all ganged up against me and went and complained to my manager as how I wasn't being collaborative and was difficult to work with. This week I had a chat with my tech lead and we cleared all the miscommunication, and he promised that he would fix his tardiness and take up his role seriously, and I agreed to step back from any involvement in engineering activities. Today, he once again didn't show up for an hour meeting and didn't even bother informing, so I went and told my boss, wondering if I got petty too soon or should I have waited for some more infractions. My view is that because no one was calling him out for his general tardiness, he thought getting friendly with me would now let me oversee his tardiness once again. The next one is a malicious compliance story. I used to work as a driver for a freight company. We used to handle awkward-sized items that no other couriers would touch. We delivered everything from coffins to tractor parts. We also had to collect things from our customers for delivery the next day. This company had a mixture of contractors and permanent drivers. I was a relief driver. I knew most of the routes, so I covered holidays or sickness. The management of the depot consisted of a delivery manager and a collection manager. These two people didn't quite see eye to eye, as sometimes getting the stuff delivered conflicted with getting stuff collected, and their targets reflected failures in a bad way. This particular day I had to cover a contractor's route. I didn't know the route, so as we had to load our trucks, this took a little longer than usual. I had around 45 deliveries that day, which is high for this predominantly rural route. I asked my manager, the delivery manager, if he knew the route. He replied that he did and ordered my route for me, so I was good to go, albeit a bit late. I did say that with the volume I had, I may struggle, and I asked him to keep an eye out for me. He said okay. I got to near midday and realized that I wasn't going to be able to complete all the deliveries, and the collections wouldn't get done either. I also noted that one of the collections was off route, and the contractor had a vehicle in that area anyway. I called in and spoke to my manager, delivery, and told him he had a choice of collections or deliveries. I also asked why the contractor couldn't cover the off-route collection. I was told to call back later and he'll see if can sort something out. He also said that the off-route collection would have to be done too. I called back later and asked for help again. He said there was no help available, so I gave him the option of deliveries or collections as there wasn't time to do both. I will get to the time a bit later. He categorically said both had to be done. The delivery manager went home, so I called in again and got the collection manager. She reiterated that there was no help at all. So either I failed the deliveries or failed the collections. If that happened, I'd have been hauled into the office the next day. So, cue malicious compliance. I called into one of the collections and I asked what time they closed. 6:30 p.m. they said. So I said I'd be back later. I carried on with the deliveries, which took me further away from that collection. At the appropriate time, I stopped delivering and drove to the collection. I collect 2 small parcels. That was all. I then drove back to where I had stopped and carried on delivering. This cost me about an hour. I finished my last delivery at 7:15 p.m. I had a 45-minute drive back to my yard. As I was leaving the round, I got a frantic call from the collection manager. She was wondering where I was. I told her what had happened and told her that I'd asked for help 4 times and was told I had to do everything allocated, so I did, and it wasn't my fault that it happened like this. Here's where the trouble really started. The company's trunking system is a fluid one. It depends on trucks leaving the depot at a certain time. For our depot, the cutoff time is 7:30 p.m. I wheeled in at just after 8 p.m. There were 15 pissed-off guys on overtime waiting for me to turn up and an articulated truck waiting for these 2 parcels. This wait caused the whole trunking system to be late the next day. My routing was discussed when I got back as it was questionable at best. When I told the collections manager that it was the delivery manager that organized it, there were angry emails between the delivery and collection managers, and I would imagine that the logistics team would have demanded an explanation too. Arses were definitely kicked. The next day, no one said a word. I wasn't on that route, and going forward, well, for a little while they either helped when I asked or didn't get me to do as much. Also, as I had exceeded legal driving time, they had to make sure I went home early for a few days, so a bit of a win there. The biggest trouble these guys had was they always assumed that the drivers were after an easy day, and even when presented with the evidence, assumed that you were still trying to be fly. This time it bit them badly. The next one is an entitled people's story. So this happened a few months ago, and for context, I-29F had just been in a pretty bad car accident back in April where I had partially wrapped my front end around a tree at 50 mph. Fortunately, I came out mostly intact outside of a broken collarbone and severe muscle strain in my legs. I had gone to the store with a friend and I had decided that I no longer needed the scooter and wanted to start walking again. She parked as close to the store as she could, but I grossly overestimated the strength I had in my legs, as by the time I got in the store, I was practically using my friend as a crutch because my legs were trying to give out. Thankfully, there was a bench near the entrance inside where she deposited me. She asked if I was sure I didn't want a scooter, and me being stubborn said yes, I was sure. We weren't in any hurry to go anywhere, as we had no other plans, and we were mostly there just to chat with one of the door hosts as they were a friend of ours. So the plan was to sit and rest my legs while we chatted and then go do our shopping. My friend had gotten me a cart to use for when we went shopping, but said she had to go to the bathroom and to wait for her to get back. I was still chatting with our door host friend at the time, so I said okay. Shortly after, it started to get busy, so I had to stop talking to the door host so they could do their job. So I decided to start scrolling through my phone while I waited for my friend to get back. I was leaving forward with my good arm on the side of the cart as I did this to let people know I was using it even though it was empty. And I also want to mention that the cart bay was completely full, and also that you'd have to pass it in order to get to me. This is relevant. Just as I was starting to wonder if my friend had fallen in and was just about to start texting her, a lady came up to my cart and, while I was still leaning on it, started to put her child in the child seat. Me. What do you think you're doing, lady? What? You're not using it. Me. Yes, I am. I'm waiting on my friend in the bathroom. Lady. Well, I need it more than you do. Can't you see my baby's tired? I then gestured to the cart bay. Me. There are a bunch of carts that you just passed in order to get to this one. Why didn't you just grab one of those like a normal person? Lady. Why can't you just grab one yourself and let me have this one? I don't have time for this. My baby's tired and you're being rude. Me. Let's see, I'm just sitting here minding my own business while waiting for my friend and a random lady is trying to get me to let her steal my cart. But I'm the rude one. Somehow I doubt that. Lady. Ugh, why do kids your age have to always act so entitled? Didn't your parents teach you to respect your elders? I'm telling you to give me this cart. Now give it. She then tried to move it, but I had my foot on the cart so she couldn't get far. Me. I don't give a damn how old you are, and my parents taught me that respect is earned, not given, so take your kid out of my cart and duck off. You're not entitled to just take whatever you want simply because you're older. Go get your own cart. It was at this point I had stood up to yank my cart back, but that proved to be a mistake, as I almost fell into the cart due to my weak legs. Instinct told me to use both arms to catch myself on the cart, but that was also a bad idea due to my broken collarbone. All this to say I made a very bad decision, and the amount of pain I was in afterwards was vocal after I landed on the floor. My door host friend heard me yelp and came over to ask what had happened. The lady told them that she was just walking by when I had stopped her and tried to steal her cart. The door host looked her, then at me, then back to her. Door host: I watched her friend give that cart to her when they came in. She should be back any second now. Lady: but I have a kid, and this idiot, pointing at me, is just faking whatever it is she has for attention. Make her get another one. And off she went. No fanfare, no police called, no justice. Just me sitting on the floor trying not to cry from the amount of pain I was in. My door host friend helped me back up and onto the bench and got me another cart just as my friend came back. When I told her what happened, she was pissed, but ultimately agreed there wasn't anything we could do as the lady was long gone by then. I ended up needing that scooter after all. I was reminded of this story as said friend and I were talking about entitled people on Reddit, and she told me to post this. To anyone who's wondering, I'm doing much better other than some slight stiffness in my shoulder. My legs are completed healed now. The next one is an entitled parent story. So I have to share this story because it's too ridiculous not to, and random Redditors may appreciate it. Today I went to the local outlet mall to treat myself to some new shoes. I was sitting on the bench and putting my shoes back on after trying some new pairs on. I heard some ruckus and noticed this family, parents and 3 kids, walk by. The kids were acting out and being loud. They had taken the metal poles that staff used to get the shoes from the higher shelves and trying to poke their parents with them. The mom was laughing about it and egging them on, typical boys will be boys stuff. As I was bending over to adjust my sandal, one of the kids swung the pole and nearly hit me in the face. I worked with kids with severe behavioral issues for years, so I was a little shaken, but knew how to respond. I quietly but firmly said "excuse me" to the kid so he'd get that thing out of my face. The kid barely blinked and walked away. Then the mother started shouting at me. I'm not normally the type to stereotype based on appearance, but she was the typical boy mom you see on social media. Face full of filler, dirty hair, and a messy bun, orange tan, etc. She began screaming that her son wasn't even near me and that her kids weren't doing anything. I pointed out that her kid nearly hit me in the face with a metal pole. She turned to her kid and started baby-talking him, saying, "You did nothing wrong, she's making it up," etc. She turned to me again and screamed that I could have moved. I rolled my eyes at the absurdity and started gathering my stuff to pay. She continued to shout things like, "Get out, move along, you should have moved," etc. I decided that there was no point in being polite, so I calmly said, "And perhaps you should be a parent and watch your kids." She continued to shout at me as I walked away. As I was waiting to pay, I saw her lurking by the door with her 300-pound stroller and glaring at me. I started laughing, like she's gonna beat me down in a shoe outlet in broad daylight. That must have pissed her off, so she walked away. I assumed she was gone, but when I left the store, her creepy husband was standing outside and staring me down. He followed me around the mall for a minute, but I eventually lost him. As I mentioned earlier, I worked with kids with severe behavior issues, including in a juvenile justice setting. I left that field not because of the kids, but because of the parents. From what I understand, it's become exponentially worse over the years. Going out in public used to be enjoyable, but I feel like people not supervising their kids is starting to become a broader societal issue. It felt so freeing to finally call out crappy parenting. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.